Welcome to my tutorial for Lords of Exile, and this is for Switch, PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. I'm actually playing on the Switch and the PC versions in this video. It has clips from both of my playthroughs. The first playthrough took around 3 hours, 29 minutes, and that was on PC. The Switch version took me around 3 hours, 50 minutes to beat about a month later, so I had to relearn everything. So what I did was, for this tutorial, I edited in some better footage from, both playthroughs, especially near the end, some of the harder sections. And I also edited out all the deaths. So this game is kind of like a Castlevania style game. And it's a very good game for this type of game. Starts out kind of similar to the to Rondo of Blood for the Turbo Duo. It's a little bit similar, except you don't actually fight on the moving cart. But yeah, I'll try to break down some of the strategies I used for each section. It wasn't a refined playthrough, but some of the later parts, did require me to play, quite well. The final boss can be pretty difficult, but the game is kind of moderate for a Castlevania style game. It's quite a bit easier than the Castlevania games, the old ones. So it's a good game. If you find the Castlevania games too hard, this is not a bad one to start with. But it'll still present a decent challenge for players that are accustomed to these kind of games. So for this guy, you can pretty much, just go up to him and tank hits if you want, because you got a lot of health, and it's a very easy first section. So you don't really have to do much as of yet. It won't get a little more challenging until later. You have a slide, which is pretty useful. This is going to be a part where you have to get through this area quickly. But for those chandeliers, you can just slide under them, and they'll fall and you won't get hit. It's kind of just showing you the moves. It's pretty much a tutorial section. Here you're going to down thrust by jumping, pressing down, and strike, and you can break through floors that are cracked. In this game, you pretty much have a sword instead of your whip, as you would in Castlevania, but the gameplay is very similar. Though I believe in this game, you have more control over your jumps midair and can move the jumps around, which you can't do in Castlevania. So some of the control is definitely better. But you do still have to deal with knockback in certain areas where you'll get knocked back into a pit, and if you do get knocked back, you won't be able to grab onto any any climbing type of things like this fence here that I'm climbing. If you get knocked back, you'll just fall through that. You won't be able to grab back on. So there are some areas that are pretty much set up to knock you into pits. But, like I said, it's not as heavy with that as the actual real Castlevania games are. But the game does have certain obstacles and things that seem to be put there just to kind of fucking irritate you, so you got to redo a section. They're not always the most clever. But for this part, just want to slide under these chandeliers, jump the gaps, and occasionally strike an enemy or jump it. For the wolves, you can jump over them, but for these like ninja type of guys, you want to slice them once and just keep moving. And you basically don't want to get hit during that section, because if you get hit, you'll get knocked back and you won't have enough time to get across. So you want to do that pretty clean to where you have it mapped out. But you do get checkpoints on every new section, and you have unlimited lives. So as long as you leave the game on, you can start from any checkpoints you got to. If you shut the game off, it will save from the beginning of the stage, so you'll have to redo whatever stage you got to, which was annoying because I had a game crash on the emulator on the Switch version, so it means I had to redo the stage again. A little bit annoying. So basically, you want to leave the game on if you're in the middle of a stage, or put it in suspend mode and come back to it. So for these things, you're just going to jump to keep them rising back up, and then just jump across, kill the bats. or whatever the fuck they are. I figured I would wait until I beat the game a second time, since I was going to do a second playthrough to do the tutorial. So I think this guy gives you something initially. Probably just some sub-weapons. You know, one of your other buttons is your sub-weapon, which is, I believe, Y. And you'll throw that out. I usually map that to turbo on my controller. And sometimes I map the sword button to turbo as well on my controller, but not always. Kind of depends on the section. See, here I think I have it mapped to turbo with the sub-weapon, so I was able to drain the health down. But you could probably do the same thing by just mashing it. If you're aggressive on this boss, it's very easy. You may want to, not stand where the lasers are going to show up, but aside from that, there's not much to this boss. Just make sure you get all the way to the right, because this game does some kind of cheap shit where it'll kill you after you beat the boss with some kind of fatal boss attack, which some of the Castlevania games did, but most of them didn't do that. But I remember there was a few that did it, or at least one that did it, but I can't remember which one. But I never really liked that, where you kill the boss and then, the boss will do a final attack and kill you. Because, it forces you to replay the boss again if you didn't know that it was going to happen. You do usually get checkpoints right before the bosses, though. So, that's helpful. So, yeah, I guess that death got left in. I didn't actually check over the footage, but, most of the deaths should be edited out. But, yeah, obviously don't do that shit. It's not like you're going to start back that far anyway, though, if you die at this beginning section. So, there's nothing too challenging until a little bit later. A lot of the game, you can get through by slowly taking out enemies and just moving the screen slowly and just taking everything out. So I do a lot of that for a lot of the game. I went with this upper path, but it probably doesn't, matter too much, aside from the fact that I guess on the bottom path you got to ride that little crate, which is easy enough. But either way, it's probably not too difficult. A lot of times you can take like alternate little paths that kind of avoid the enemies. You don't really need to get every little box you see, because you get checkpoints pretty frequently, and you can usually pick up sub-weapons every few seconds anyway. So most of the boxes are going to contain sub-weapons. So make sure you hit this lever. I believe it opens up a gate somewhere. Down thrust is good as enemies are approaching. It usually wipes them out, because there's a little bit of a wave that emanates from the attack that will, fuck up a lot of enemies that are trying to rush you. So it is a good way to take out enemies. It's also a very effective way to, when you're landing on a platform, if you down thrust immediately, it's a good way to take out an enemy that's waiting for you on a platform to knock you back. I usually just jump over these guys, but it's a little sloppy. But as long as you have enough health to get to the next checkpoint, you'll be all right. These parts don't really force you to play super carefully, because you'll just bullshit your way to the next checkpoint until the game gets more challenging. So you get these little shops every once in a while, and you can buy back some health and sometimes weapons and things like that. That's all you really use the money for anyway, so, it's not a big deal to spend it. But you would get your health back anyway in the next area if you died, so you don't have to spend the money. You do keep the money upon death. So here's where you get this little, it's not really a helper, but it's like this thing you summon. And You have to activate it manually, though. It doesn't actually attack enemies for you or anything. So these guys are very easy. You can throw some projectiles at them, slice them a few times. You don't really have to dodge much of anything. And then once you get this, you'll get this little thing that you summon with the bumpers. And by holding down the sword button, you'll charge it up, and then you release. So that's why I wouldn't map turbo for certain parts for the sword, because then I couldn't do this move. Sometimes you need to do it to break walls. Whenever you see these little white square walls, you got to use the charge shot to break them. With this specific character, each one is a little different. There's two characters you unlock. Here I was looking up how to actually do the move, because I wasn't sure how you even do the move. I probably didn't read something that it was trying to tell me. But really, it's just hold down the sword button. So I think I had to take it off turbo. And once you hold it down, you'll see the character on the left will kind of shake. And that means that it's charged up. And then you just release, so very easy. It's actually a very useful way to take out enemies from a distance, since it recharges on its own if you wait around long enough. You can use it to pull a lot of bullshit with taking out enemies from across the screen, because it travels the full screen distance. So I'm going to edit down some sequences where I pulled some bullshit with that, but it does take a while. But yeah, if you want to, you can throw out these charge shots and just take this thing out. Once you use it up, the bar will deplete, but it'll recharge after a certain amount of time. So when it's full again, you can summon the little creature again. But once you the bar only goes down when you use charge shots. So it's not based on a timer, so you can have it out all the time and just use it as you need it. I mean, of course, you could go up to these enemies and just stab them with your sword if you want. I was just playing it safe. So you can buy back some things. Sometimes, I believe some of them don't give you health. It might be random. So you can buy health if you want. But this is another checkpoint anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. After you kill this rat, you got a little bit more space, so you can throw out your specials if you want. You can easily just jump and down thrust these things too. It's a reliable way to take them out. It does leave you vulnerable though for a little while, so you can take damage. So you can destroy some of these barrels that are in your way. And now's a pretty simple little climbing sequence. Just want to, move when they're not shooting, basically. And I believe you have to hit that lever to open the gate. Those things can't shoot up, so once you're above them, they can't do anything. You could try to take this guy out if you want, but you can also just try to run past him. You have a nice little spot where you can kind of sit and just smack those things around if you make it properly. If you don't cut off the bottom part of that wall, you can kind of sit up there and slice at the enemy. There's probably a sub weapon or something up here, but it's definitely optional. Looks like there was another rat in the box, which wasn't too helpful. I don't know if that's always there, but probably better to avoid that one. So here you're just going to jump to the next platform when it swings to the end. Very simple timing on that. And you're going to do the same thing again in a moment. So now we have a fairly tricky boss fight. It's the hardest one so far. It's not going to blow your fucking balls off, but it's a little tricky. There's an aggressive way to play it, but it's probably going to take a few attempts even with the aggressive method, but it works. So this is what I did. I like killing shit fast, so I like to jump in and just immediately start slicing at it, jumping up and slicing it, even if I take some damage. I don't really worry about that too much. And then I start launching my sub-weapons at it, with turbo. And then within range, I can still slice at the tiger a little bit. If I stand right on the edge of the platform, I can get some extra damage that way. And now I can finish the boss off by staying kind of in the middle and jumping as I'm getting sucked to the back of the room, basically. He's going to change directions, though, and start sucking you in the other direction. So just be ready to jump and readjust your positioning a little bit, but keep slashing. And that's about it. But yeah, those extra slashes that I get in by standing on the edge of the platform with the sword is a good way to cram in a lot of damage. And if you do it quick enough, you'll be able to wear the boss out before he wears you out as far as the health bar goes. Not as far as getting sucked off from two different directions. But not too bad with that strategy. So now we're just going to be moving to the right as usual, usually moving in, one fucking direction. But you want to watch out for those rocks, so just wait for them or slide under them. And there is a death that I didn't edit out. So yeah, there's going to be probably a few of those because it's a long video to edit, 3.5 or 4 hours or something like that, 3 hours 50 minutes I think for the latest playthrough. So it is easy sometimes to miss some of these little deaths, but for the most part, it should be fairly clean. I just want to be able to give a good idea of what the strategies were that I used on my successful attempts. So a few deaths will at least show what could happen if you play like shit like I did. So here you can double jump. You now have a double jump. I think we just got it on this stage. Whenever you beat a stage, I should mention that you get new abilities and things, or you'll get something like your sword length might double, or your sword does more damage, things like that. There's a lot of little things you get as you beat each stage. Kind of like Mega Man a little bit, except that you're not choosing stage order. And they're not all weapons. Some of them are just upgrades to your existing abilities. So here's where that comes into play, where I mentioned, knockback. If you do get hit at all on this stage, there's a good chance you'll die because, there's knockback and you can't grab onto the vines if you get knocked back. So you're just going to fall all the way down and probably die. So just, be careful with your timing and take the enemies out that you need to take out and just keep moving up. You can get below these enemies because your sword has a little bit of a width to it to where it can hit stuff that's a little bit above you. So you can use that to pull bullshit and not have to get in the line of their fire. So for this guy, to wipe this guy out, just stand with, outside of his range of his power waves, and we're just going to unleash charge shots. And this may take you a while. You may even need to replenish your bar and wait around. But I'm editing down some of these, so it's gonna look like I did it really fast. I don't think that one was that fast, but I edited it down because it's you already get the idea. You see the strategy. It's just stand there and throw charge shots out. It's redundant to show me doing that for like a minute or two on every one of those guys, because that's pretty much what I do whenever I come across those guys. I mean, it's fine from my perspective. I don't mind doing it, but it's not really too entertaining to watch. So I mean, you get the idea. And, like I said, the tutorial, I'm trying to demonstrate the best strategies I found on my regular playthrough. There was no refinement. I did beat the game twice, but that was as a result of trying to fill out my kill list, not to try to learn the game better. Like I said, I beat it on PC maybe a month ago. And then about a month later, I beat it on Switch. but only because I wanted to kill it off, get it on the Switch kill list. My games beaten list is what I mainly work towards, is just beating games. So I, go through hundreds of games each year. And part of what I do is I go through ports of games that I already beat. And that kind of accelerates the process. So, now one thing I don't do too much of is beat regional variants. Like I'm not going to go on an NES game and just beat the Japanese version, it may be identical. Sometimes they're identical. I'm not going to do that just to get an extra kill on the list. So I limit it a little bit, but I will beat ports on different platforms. You know what I mean? So for me, that falls into that loophole. So this was just a little double kill just to get it on my list. But I didn't remember most of what I learned on my first playthrough because it had been about a month ago. So you can see with those guys, that guy's a little bit different because of the terrain is a little bit bumpier, but you can see the idea. I go in, release a charge shot, and then retreat back out of range of his fire. Just keep doing that until he's dead, and you don't have to ever get close to those rock guys. You can pretty much do that whenever you see a rock guy. You can pretty much do that every time they appear. So if you want to be, exploitative as I am and exploit it and not risk taking damage, because this is a pretty long stage, and the stages where they appear can be pretty lengthy before you get another checkpoint. So I mean, my recommendation is to take it, carefully. Unless you're trying to go for a speed run, then fuck it. But, you wouldn't be interested in my strategies if you're going for a fucking speed run. So I would say just take it slow and chip away at their health. And your bar will recharge eventually. Now, if I was playing this on a emulator that had features like fast forward, I would probably fast forward to recharge my bar, since when there's no risk of death or danger or whatever, I will use fast forward to just not waste my time. I've done that in games like Target Earth for the Genesis when I beat that. Very hard game. But yeah, see, the Yuzu emulator on the Switch doesn't really have any features like that yet. It doesn't have save states to practice parts more efficiently. It doesn't have fast forward. So, it runs the games better than the actual console in most incidences. With you can even get better frame rates. You can scale up the games to 4K visuals. Awesome fucking emulator. Now, of course, you're not getting 4K visuals on this game because it looks like an NES game, so you can't really get any advantages except being able to use whatever controller you want because it's emulators on PC. So that's nice. But yeah. So this is basically just climbing and taking out the spiders. Not much to say. Pretty damn easy. There are hard climbing sections later, but this ain't one of them. So just take your time. You may, just be aware of some bats that may knock you off the vines. So that was a very easy part if you play it like I did. But I'm going to edit this down, obviously, but you'll see what I'm talking about. I think you already get the idea. So find a little safe spot. I think you're going to see me stand there in a second. What I'm looking for is a spot that I can just stand and basically charge my shots, and it'll be able to reach the rock guy. Because I think I'm wrong about those charge shots reaching the full screen. I think they reach maybe 80% of the screen, but I don't know if they can go all the way across. So what you want to do is charge your shots and just stand in that safe spot, and the rocks won't hit you, and you can just keep throwing those charge shots at the rock guy until he dies. And we're going to do the same thing here. You just find that little sweet spot, and that's it. I always exploit this kind of shit whenever I can. I'm always looking for some kind of positioning bullshit I can pull. And this is a really, really obvious one, I mean, I think it's pretty logical to do this. Some of the ones I found, especially with save state practice, and especially on some shooters, you find some crazy spots where you're like pixel perfect to the boss, and it's a really weird place to find, and you'll find some crazy positioning exploit. You can you can bullshit your way through, and I've illustrated some of those ones that I found in many of my tutorials, which I'm always looking for stuff like that. So if you're interested in shooters or just very old games, all kinds of games, I have a lot of tutorials that cover that kind of shit. This one I thought would be cool to cover because it is a moderately challenging game, and the end is pretty challenging. There are some. The final boss is especially difficult at first, but in reality, I would say the final boss is actually kind of easy, though, because the patterns are really... I mean, it looks complicated at first, but once you understand the movement pattern, it's quite basic. So, but it still took me a little while to beat that boss. I forget how long it took me. I did get to it 2 separate times on 2 separate playthroughs a month apart. So I know it probably took me at least 30 minutes on that boss. One time at least. I'm not sure if the first time took me like an hour or something, but not the easiest boss. Definitely the hardest part of the game. So I believe this is the spider stage, as I saw a lot of spiders earlier. So there's probably a spider boss here. You know, the stages tend to have like a theme to them. And for the boss coming up, there's going to be a super easy exploit I found to make it a complete joke. So, you know, shit like that is really useful to illustrate, even though you probably could have just watched my edited playthrough and figured it out yourself. But some of the parts could use a little explanation. We usually only do tutorials on games that are, you know, either super short and I might have something to say about them, or games that are actually moderately difficult. And I do beat a lot of games that, you know, really don't feel that difficult, worth trying to explain anything about. So, you know, and it's not until this game gets a little bit deeper in that there's more useful things maybe to explain, different strategies and things. Like, so far we haven't really come up across anything too challenging, except for that one boss that I was talking about getting sucked off in 2 different directions. You know, that was about the extent of anything I would say that gave me a little bit of a challenge anyway. But I know that's going to vary, you know, for the players, depending on your experience level of these games. But so for this guy, you get a checkpoint right in this room, and you really can't fuck up too bad because you're going to start back here. So it's probably not going to take you too long to be able to do this. So I get right in the boss's fucking armpit over here. And I swing in the, you know, a lot of times I'm swinging in the opposite direction because the blade hits behind you a little bit for some reason. And then when he goes out to the side, I throw all my scythes at him, my sub-weapon, to get a bunch of damage, like half of his health. And mainly what I'm doing, I'm staying in this safe spot, right in this mid portion of his body, I guess you could say, where 2 of his legs are, those 2 little legs. But I'm trying to get up in there. But most of the side of his body is like a giant safe spot. So while you're doing this, anything that's trying to come down and hit you, like these spiders, is going to get killed too, if you position yourself high up enough, you know. But it doesn't take very precise positioning to do this. I did this like very early when I got to this boss. I figured this out. I mean, you know, it did not take me long to figure that out. That's usually the first thing I'm looking for, though. So not everybody is focused on trying to exploit shit immediately. I am. I tend to always be focused on that. As soon as I get to a boss, I'm trying to pull some kind of bullshit usually. Unless it's a game where there's a lot at risk, like I'm going to be sent super far back, then I may, in that case, play a little safer. But, you know, oftentimes I'm still reckless and I still try to do weird shit when I get to bosses. So I have a tendency to find those type of things. No safe spots for the final boss, unfortunately, but there's definitely a routine. I mean, there's no real valuable safe spots anyway. There is one safe spot for one of his attacks, but, you know, you're only going to use that a few times in the fight. So, what's probably happening here is I may have stopped playing the game, and then, of course, you know, I rebooted up, and then I'm testing the controls out again, because, of course, I forget the controls as soon as I stop playing something. So, you know, I'm probably acclimating myself. I think I was trying a different controller maybe around this point as well. I had gotten this fight pad that's like a Sega Genesis style fight pad, but the D-pad on it is kind of tiny, but aside from that, it's kind of nice. But I was hitting some fucked up diagonals that were causing me to dive bomb into some pits doing my down thrust when I didn't want to do it. So not the best controller for this particular game. It would be fine for games that are not as sensitive to false diagonals probably. But the D-pad was kind of nice aside from being a little bit too small for me. I don't know why they made it smaller. It's a pretty nice controller. Whenever I review fucking controllers, I'll probably include that one in the reviews. I've been wanting to do a controller review video for years. I do have a really good camera for it, but I haven't even used it. I've had the camera for years, and I haven't even made a video with it yet. So for this, you mainly want to stay up above when you see the horses coming in with their little thing that they swing at you. You mainly want to stay up on top of a crate or something so they can't reach you. You don't need to kill them. You just want to jump over them or stay up high, basically. I mean, I took tons of damage and still beat it, so this is not a great demonstration. And you see, you still get the checkpoint. That's why I say this game really hasn't gotten that challenging yet. You know, I mean, in Castlevania, if you're playing like this, you get kind of fucked because in Castlevania, you know, you got to play a lot better because you don't always get a checkpoint on every screen. You only get them on like a special gates and stuff. So maybe every few screens. So you do have to play well, and sometimes you got to do long stretches in that game on a few lives. So you also take a lot more damage in Castlevania. You know, most of them you probably might take like 4 pieces of health per hit or something. So you can only get hit maybe 3 or 4 times in some of them. So, you know, compared to that, you can kind of just fuck around for most of the game. You know, if you're used to playing those kind of games, you know, you're going to be fairly relaxed with most of this game because you're not going to be pushed to your limits or anything. But you still have to play, you know, well on a lot of parts. There's still plenty of parts where you do have to play well, which that's what makes the game, you know, moderately challenging even for experienced players. It's a decent little challenge, you know. But only at certain parts. There's only certain parts that are a little tricky until you figure out what to do. So here I am now waiting for my bar to recharge, which maybe I should have edited these out too. That's probably why my playthrough was so long. I think the game is only supposed to be like 45 minutes long. But I was dicking around a lot with this bar. I wouldn't be surprised if that added to the playtime. Because even when it was edited, it was still kind of long. It was like an hour and 11 minutes or something. So, but I do like to fuck around like that. Like I said, I'm very much into exploiting shit, and I will be patient with waiting for shit to recharge and then spamming it. So I don't have a problem with that. So you're gonna probably see some of that. And I mean, I guess it's also good for, you know, it's a good technique for players that are not as accustomed to these kind of games. It's good to know that you can chip away at the enemies and kind of move slowly and take your time a little bit, on some parts anyway. Now, there are going to be parts where you're going to have to get your positioning and movement down pretty fluid because later stages have some parts where you have to keep moving pretty much and be precise with your movements. So you won't be able to coast through the whole game like that, but you can pull bullshit on quite a few parts, as you see me doing by moving slower and taking your time, which is something I always like to do in these old games. I think it's a great strategy for many of these old games, is kind of just chipping away at the enemy slowly. Like you just move the screen a little bit until the enemy is just barely in range, and you take shots at it and try to wipe it out before you move forward. And that was a big part of my strategy when I beat Jim Power for the Super Nintendo, which it's pretty much like, you know, it's a game pretty much based on that mechanic of inching the fucking screen because it's so cheap. You're pretty much, you know, for the walking sections, you're pretty much just inching the screen and taking everything out. Of course, it's a lot more difficult than just that, but that is a big part of the way I played that. And I have a tutorial on that. Jim Power in the Lost Dimension for Super Nintendo. Maybe the first tutorial I made. A very hard Super Nintendo game, but yeah, it takes that inching screen thing to another level. So, I mean, that game kind of taught me about the value of inching the screen, you know, on all these old games, you know, to a degree. I mean, if you played Ninja Gaiden for NES or Castlevania, you're not going to be doing that too much because you have a whip, you don't have long-range weapons, and Ninja Gaiden likes to respawn enemies. The one for NES respawns enemies right on top of you. Ninja Gaiden 3 kind of fixed that for the NES, but it still manages to be the hardest one, so because they made everything else harder. So that was tough. And limited continues is tough for Ninja Gaiden 3. But this is just moving through. You got to destroy these generators every so often. I don't think there's too much I need to say about this. I'm mostly going to try to illustrate things that maybe could use a little bit of commentary on, you know. Some of them are just, you know, you could have figured it out anyway, but try to keep the video a little bit entertaining instead of just fucking talking about anything else but this game, you know, so. But we are getting about to the halfway point soon after this 4th stage, so things will get a little bit more spicy. There'll be a little bit more to talk about as far as strategies and shit. The game does amp things up as you get farther into the game, so it has a good, nice, even little difficulty balancing, you know, increase as you move forward. So for those guys on the chain, they're kind of like chain chomps, but you just avoid them, jump over them. You may want to get your health back here, but good news is you get a checkpoint right below this ladder because there's a boss right here. It's like a mini boss, but the mini bosses are sometimes harder than the main bosses, you know. So it's a boss is a boss pretty much in this game, but this is just very pattern based, very heavily pattern based. When he's about to swing, you want to move away. And when he jumps down, you can take a hit or two and just keep moving. take like one hit and move. And when he does his big swing, just make sure you get enough distance so that he's coming at you. As he's charging at you, you're slicing. If you get the distance right, you'll get damage at him. You get damage on him as he's approaching you from his charge move. Here I kind of just tank it, but normally what I would do is I would actually jump those wave firing, but I didn't do it. I was just playing very sloppy when I beat it, I guess. But yeah, as long as you have distance, you see he'll charge right into your sword attacks. So for this net, you just mash the sword button, you'll get out of it. And now for this, you just jump. After he does his net attack, he always does this where he sits at one side of the screen and throws out sword waves. So what you do is you jump a sword wave, slash at him like once or twice, and then jump it again, and rinse and repeat. When he does his laser across the screen, you just slide under it and get close to him. And if you remain crouched, you can take some shots at him too. So those are a few tricks. So now for stage 5, I think we may have just gotten this rolling shield kind of thing added on. Let me see if I check what we got. Oh no, okay, I see. We got the shield that deals double damage, which is kind of, or the sword that does double damage, which is completely useless. I mean, because it tells you that your sword does double damage, but the sword has like the same range as it had before, and the enemies are just going to be scaled up to it's not like you're going to kill bosses faster. They're still going to take a lot of hits. You're not going to notice doing double damage on the boss health bars. I didn't notice anything like that. So it's kind of just like a useless little thing like, hey, your sword does double damage. But I mean, these kind of enemies always took one hit to kill anyway. So there's no benefit there. And the bosses seem to take just as long to beat. So it's kind of just like a joke, I mean, yeah, you're doing double damage, but now the enemies have twice as much health. So there you go. But yeah, this part is very easy. This part is pretty much just, killing off some enemies, double jumping up to the platforms if you want. I mean, a lot of them you could probably just run past the archers. It's such a short section. This guy you don't have to play well at all. I just go up to him, crouch, and mash. I mean, I don't care if I take a hit because I didn't even take any damage on the stage, I don't think, anyway. So, very fucking easy. It's an easy way to start things out. So these guys can be a little irritating at first, but all you really got to do is jump over them when they zip by. Eventually they'll stop, and that's when you can throw a sub-weapon at them if you want to take them out fast. Or you can use your helper's charge shot, or if you're close to them, just slash them. But I'm usually, I usually stay away from them. Sometimes I'll slash them. But when they stop, that's your chance. But when they're in that tornado form, they're invincible. So you got to wait for them to stop spinning. And just go through here, break the wall with the special character, and then just hit the lever. You can also keep your charge shots ready, which you're going to see me doing more when I just unleash my charge shots as I'm just moving through the stage. So I keep it charged at all times here, and I just use it as needed, and that helps. But these guys can be a little annoying swarming around the screen like that, but just make sure you jump over them and wait for them to stop. It's your choice if you want to kill them or just move on, Don't do that, though. You don't want to, move the platform up when you're not using it. But luckily, it does come back down. Otherwise, you'd be kind of fucked. So now you can throw the great thing about your charge shot with this guy is it goes through walls. So you can just clean those guys out before you even make your way over there. So again, I have a nice habit of hitting the fucking lever and letting the platform leave. So if you want to waste some time like I did, then do that on every one of them, and then your playthrough can be close to an hour and a half long like mine was. Okay, so somehow that guy died immediately. I might have released a charge shot when he spawned out of the gate. I'm not sure. Maybe you can spawn kill them right as they appear now that I see that. That might be a trick or something you can do. I don't know. I didn't exactly need to master this section, I mean, it's a little challenging. I think I died at least once on it, but, maybe a few times, but it was nothing too difficult. But it is kind of a long section, so you can't be too sloppy. You don't take that many hits before you die. So for this part, I think you might just be able to leave. I don't even think I looked at what was over here on the left side. I guess I got the health, but I don't know what's all over on the left. I didn't even bother. Maybe I checked it on another playthrough since I beat the game twice. Basically what this is, most of this footage is from my recent playthrough of the Switch version, but I did edit out some scene. I edited in some scenes of my best boss fights, which are from the other version. What did I say? I think the PC version is where I had some of my better boss fights, because that was the first version I beat, and I just happened to play a little bit better at certain parts. But I didn't go through all my footage and try to find all the best my best playing segments or anything. But I wanted to do that for at least for the harder parts, to have some good footage of some of the harder sections. I'll just be able to showcase it a little bit better. So this is very easy. You can just stay in one spot and just pivot left and right and keep slashing, and you'll take those guys out very easily. So I believe this is where you get your second helper, your second and final helper. He pretty much does similar to the same thing, except I don't know if it goes through walls, but he has a projectile that can do similar things, but the difference is it will grapple onto grapple points, specific grapple points, so you can get across. So you'll have to use it. So now you're going to see what that character does as far as traversing. See, he'll just grapple to the grapple point, and you'll kind of just swing across. You can take out those guys from underneath. And there's another grapple point here, so you can skip over, at least one of the guys. You see, it can also be used as a projectile to kill shit too, but I don't think it goes as far. Not sure if it goes through walls like the other one does. I mean, I'll say this. Normally when I want to take out enemies from far away, I use the other helper. His shots just seem to be more reliable for doing a little fucking sniping action, but these archers won't damage you too much, and there's not too many pits that you can get knocked into in this area, so really not much challenge here if you just kind of just take your time. I would say just kill the shit that's, blocking your progress. These guys are kind of aggressive, so you probably want to take him out because he'll be jumping around like an asshole, and the problem is you could easily get knocked into the little pit where you're trying to move across, so probably worth taking him out. Sub-weapons are a good way to take these enemies out, too, from far away without having to, wait an hour and a half for your special move to charge up. You get so many sub-weapon pickups that, you're not really fucking yourself over if you use them pretty liberally throughout the game. I didn't use them as much as I could have, because a lot of stuff just wasn't that, aggressive or difficult, but you can use them a lot. So in this specific little shop, I got like a whirling shield that I could get, but I didn't even bother with that. I think I get that anyway when I respawn in a new area. Each store, I think, has randomized pickups each time you visit it. So this boss is 2 forms. It might be the first one that's actually 2 forms. But it's really not that bad. The first thing you want to do is take some hits at it up here, and now immediately get down and go under its chin. That will avoid the flamethrower. And then all I do is go up here, and I just keep hitting it. I stand on this ledge, and I just keep hitting it, and I just ignore whatever it's doing. I'll take some hits, but it's not really a big deal. I'll have most of my health for the second form. You see where I'm standing, I barely got touched. I might have got hit like once. So Now for the second form, it's actually quite easy, but you can still get hit. It's a head that just bounces, and there's a few ways to hit it. Initially, you can wait in this corner and it won't bounce on you, so you can just throw shit at it whenever it hits this corner, and you'll get a lot of damage that way if you wait it out. See, I've already gotten, like, what, a fourth of its health off by just fucking around over here, so... Eventually, it does move ever so slightly to where it will bounce into you in the corner, so... It doesn't work forever, but it works for most of the fight. I think it does anyway, because I noticed I got hit eventually in the corner. See, I got hit there. Maybe I wasn't far back enough. But I think eventually it will hit you in the corner. And then all you really have to do is just walk to the side of it and hit it. Just walk, out of range of the where it hits. I was doing it very sloppy. It might be good to slide to get a little bit more distance faster, but very easy. But it could take several attempts. The first form could be a little tricky if you're not aggressive. It's a pretty easy boss, though. So now I think there's going to be more platforming annoyances. We're getting knocked back into pits and things like that. It's going to get a little bit more aggressive with that, than it has been. I think now when you do a down thrust, a bigger wave comes out of it too. At least if you're at full health, I think it might be tied into your how much health you have. I'm not sure, but it's good because the down thrust was very good even before the upgrade. So now it's a very effective way to move shit out of the way or kill shit. That's within middle range from you, medium range, but. It helps when you're jumping up on platforms and you follow it up with a down thrust when you land on the platform. That will actually give you a lot of breathing room in some parts. See, like that. It has the benefit of clearing those guys out. It kills them and it prevents you from getting knocked back. Now, if you get hit during it, I think you still do get knocked back, but I don't think you get knocked back as far. It didn't look like I did. So... a little shop here. There's a very easy little mid-boss here. I've never died to this thing, so I don't have any great strat. I just slashed the shit out of it. But I wasn't really even trying to dodge it or anything. I just kept slashing it. I pretty much just tanked the hits. Because I didn't take any damage on the stage anyway, so I didn't bother to try to dodge anything. Like I said, I usually go for the aggressive kill, if possible. And then it does eat you, but that's part of the stage. At first I thought I got fucked over, because this game likes to do that shit where you kill the boss and then it kills you right before it dies. Luckily it doesn't do it on every boss, but it does it a number of times. I find it to be annoying. There's some troll type of elements to the game with some of the placements and things that are kind of just there so you fuck up and then have to, get back there and do something different next time. But it doesn't stand out too much as far as, with these kind of games used to do, the NES, era games that this is trying to imitate. So for these walls, these are a new thing. You just slice at them. So all you're doing is moving through. Nothing too difficult, and you already get another checkpoint here, so. You just want to wait for that stream of fucking acid to, dissipate and then move. You see how I did that slide when I didn't want to do it? That's because I was using this controller that I mentioned, this, forgot the name of it, but it's got a tiny D-pad, so it's very easy to hit diagonals and slide and down thrust when I didn't want to. So that was kind of shitty. Probably should have went back to using the M30, which I did end up using near the end of the game. The 8-bit Do M30, great D-pad on that. It's one of my standard controllers that I use for a lot of 2D games. You may want to clear out these floating things every so often if they're starting to gang up on you, but. There's not too much to say about the strats here. It's a very easy stage if you don't play recklessly. The spikes may be an instant death. I know they are in another area of the game later on. So I'm going to assume that you don't want to touch the spikes. They probably will kill you. So it is good, to avoid being knocked back into the spikes. So it's good to clear out some shit. If you're going to ride the platforms, try to clear out the stuff that's right there that's going to be fucking with you. A strange thing is you can kind of slice behind you a little bit, I believe, like I did on the spider. If it's directly behind you, it will get sliced, which is a little odd. The sword has quite a good range, which is good. It keeps the game from playing like shit. One mistake a lot of games make is they make the hit detection really short on the weapons, and it can make some games just play like shit. So it's better to have a little bit too much range than have it be too short. So for here, you might want to clear out some of these spitting things if you don't feel like you can make it without getting knocked back. I was kind of just trying to jump my way through. Of course, I was sliding like crazy, not wanting to slide because of that little tiny fucking D-pad. That got me killed more than a few times on this playthrough. That might be why it took me an extra 30 minutes to beat this version. When I revisited it, it took about 3 hours and 50 minutes. And the first time I think it was like 3 hours 20, 3 hours 30. So this is super easy. Just stand here and spam your scythes to begin with. That takes off like 75% of the boss's health. Then you want to destroy these fingers as they approach, but get away from them before they pop out. You're going to see rocks coming out of the ground. Just get away from it and start slashing, and they'll go into your slashes and die. And then you can kill some of these things if they're giving you trouble, but just focus on hitting the boss. Doesn't matter if you take some damage. It's a very easy boss. You may want to dodge some of the green shit that it throws out, but aside from getting in a gap, I don't really worry about it too much. This stage might have took like 10 minutes or something. I think that's what it said, but nothing too hard. The game does start getting more challenging at this point. I think the next two stages are where the game really ramps up. So we will see a little bit more. You'll be forced to utilize some of your platforming skills and shit like that a little bit better. And manage your health a little bit better, because earlier in the game, you could take quite a bit of damage and just kind of bullshit your way to the next checkpoint, brute force it. But there are some segments that get pretty challenging where you do have to execute them cleanly. So the game does challenge you near the end. I don't think this first section was anything too challenging, but I think this stage does have some challenging parts. Anytime you have like flying or floating enemies in these games, they can be kind of some of the most annoying enemies because it's easy to get knocked into holes. And that's no different here. You have two very easy enemies at the end that you could just run past or kill. Don't be afraid to spam your sub-weapon just to get rid of them. So these skulls that circle around the platforms with the flames around them, I don't think you can kill them, so just get in the gaps. These guys, it's good to kill these samurai guys from far away because the flames that they spit can really interfere with your movement, so it's good to eliminate them whenever they appear. You're going to ignore these little armadillos on the ceiling over here, whatever the fuck they are. I mean, I even took hits and corrected it and was able to get through, so it was nothing too difficult. You do, of course, have to use the specific helper for the specific obstacle. So this guy breaks walls, and the other one is for grappling. Though I also like this particular guy, like I said, for long-distance attacks to pull bullshit. Their attacks are both a little different. There's a little shop here you can use if you need it. It might be good to get some health back since I don't know if there's a checkpoint mid area. I mean, I'm thinking maybe the shops are always a checkpoint, but, I'm not even sure about that because I feel like I didn't always get a checkpoint at those. So better just to buy your health back so you don't have to die and redo this whole section. It's a pretty long section. And you can see it's a little bit more challenging than some of the shit we dealt with so far. But if you play it slow, like I've said a lot, and take the enemies out first, it's really not too difficult. Because, most of the shit you can sit back and snipe out, before you move forward. So it does make it pretty easy overall. But you'll see there will be some parts that are actually kind of legitimately challenging. You don't have to bother getting your health back if you don't want, because this is definitely a checkpoint. So this is another mid-boss that I never died on before. All I did was played, aggressive and exhausted all my sub-weapons and slashed it. I don't think I ever died to any of these mid-boss type of things. Or I should say bosses that don't have health bars. There's a few of them. They're kind of like mini-bosses, but they don't have health bars for some reason. There's a few of those. I don't think I ever died to any of those in the game. It just, didn't even do anything. I went up and threw all my shit at it. So, and you get to start right at it, I'm pretty sure. So, very easy. So while you're climbing, just be careful not to get shot, because the knockback means you cannot grab onto the gates again. So you'll just fall to your death most likely if you get hit, while you're climbing. But yeah, you can snipe it out if you want with that little charge throw move, but you got to watch out for that laser. See, I landed on the ledge, so I was able to save myself. But if you don't land on the ledge, you'll get knocked all the way down to the bottom probably. But it's not a hard part. So this part, I have to see which part this is. Yeah, this part's a little tricky. Definitely one of the harder sections so far. You want to try to take out those samurais from a distance when you can, because they're going to get in your way. I like to jump off that ledge and come down with a down thrust. Usually takes out that guy, and then, use some of your ranged attacks to take out the samurais. See, that down thrust really has a range on it. It's really nice. It's really nice when you don't do it accidentally and get yourself killed by down thrusting into a pit mid-jump, which I've done a lot. I did that in the Mario games too, the newer ones, where you can do the ass bounce. For games like that, you really want a reliable D-pad, and I wasn't using a great D-pad for this game with that little tiny D-pad, so I did down thrust myself to death, more than I should have. But yeah, it's mainly just ride the platforms, take the areas slowly, and remove the enemies. But it's still challenging, because if if a certain thing hits you, then you got to redo the whole section. So it's a little challenging. I didn't really use the shops too much because of all the checkpoints, so that's why I have so much cash in reserve. This was one of the harder bosses, for sure. You can use the skives to hit it and kind of bounce them off the enemy, get a lot of hits in, but you do have to dodge certain attacks it does. Like when it does that shit on the ground with that, like with this shit, you got to jump over it, because that does massive damage, I believe. So you do have to learn to dodge a few attacks. For this, you can kind of just jump up and hit it in the middle and just try to jump and dodge it. Simple enough, but one of the harder bosses. It does have a few different attacks. You want to try to get those hits in and bounce it around. There's a few different patterns of those spinning things that you'll have to learn and jump over. But you don't have to play it perfectly, as you see here. If you can bounce it in a corner, you can get a lot of nice damage, but eventually it will reset its position anyway, I believe. I couldn't find a way to just, stun lock it in a corner and just destroy it. So it seems to snap out of it eventually. Those bats might kill you, but I'm not sure. I would stay away from that door. Yeah, see, that stage took me a little longer. I believe 22 minutes. So that was definitely a harder stage. So now we're on the final stage. And this stage has some of the most challenging sections of the entire game. So, starting with this one, this is not an easy section either. So it ramps up quite a bit here. I think this is where it really spikes. But you see my positioning here to avoid damage on these things. I like throwing out a charge shot to take out those snakes as they appear on screen. Pretty much spawn killing them as they appear. Or at least trying to, but the sooner you kill them, they won't be antagonizing you. Because if you don't kill them, they're constantly up your ass. So certain enemies, you want to get rid of them as soon as possible. Of course, just wait for the flames to go down and then make your jump. And here you're just getting in the middle platform so that it'll arc over you. You got to break the walls in advance, so it's important to know which walls you're going to have to break so you can release your charge shot in advance and have the wall broken by the time you get to it. So it helps to know what's coming up. So for this part, I edited it down. But it's the same principle of throwing these charge shots at the rock guy, but it just takes longer because a lot of times the enemies will show up that he spawns and they'll block your shots. So you see there's one hit, but it takes a while because I edited that, that could have taken over a minute, but I edited it down. But it's very easy. Just stay back and just keep throwing those things out. Now this is one of the harder parts because if you double jump, you pretty much die a lot of times because of the ceiling spikes. So you got to get your height just right, and you got to know how to move in this area. So for this part, I jump and then down thrust immediately, otherwise you'll hit into the spikes. So if you want to jump in here, it seems like you have to down thrust. You don't have a short jump in this game. You have a one height jump. So you can't do a little bunny hop. So you have to down thrust midair to get yourself back down to the ground before your head hits the spikes. So that makes it a little tricky. You really got to be careful about your double jumps. And the game has some bullshit where if you don't time your double jump like at the peak of your jump or at a certain time within your jump, it doesn't work. Which Shinobi 3 for the Genesis did that, but I never liked that aspect of the controls in those Shinobi games. And this decided that was a good control feature. Sometimes you want to do your double jump as you're coming down pretty low, because you'll hit the spikes. It's more of an irritating level because it's just very easy to jump up and hit your head. So I believe this is another one of those mini bosses that I never died on. So I didn't learn any strategies or anything. I just pretty much wasted all my shit and just tanked the hits. And that's it. And if you're using if you have those skives or whatever, you can throw those in the air and it will slow the descent of the boss down so it can't land on top of you right away. So very easy. You can kind of just rush up these gates and climb up here. And like I said, you don't have to get in the line of fire on a lot of those things. You can just stay underneath them and still hit them. See, like that was sloppy. I didn't have to do that. So here I'm crossing through the middle, but you could probably just go up the other way as well. I don't really know what the difference is. I don't think I died on this section, so it's not like I experimented with the other route. But you can see what's on the other side. It looks more annoying on the right side with those platforms and all that bullshit. So this is probably the easier way to go. So yeah, just hit the lever and go through. So this is another one of those bosses I think I never died on. It's a set of mini bosses, I believe. And again, all I did was play really sloppy and just slash at the shit. I mean, I make a moderate effort not to get hit, but, you know, not that. I'm not that aggressive with dodging. I'm mostly just trying to jam hits in. I think I cut it close, but it was easy. And as they turn more and more red, you'll know how close to death each one of the clones is. But as long as you're really aggressive, I don't think this is going to be too difficult. You see how sloppy I played this? You probably get a checkpoint close to this fight, I would guess. But I never died here. So this is one of the harder sections. This is very much based on positioning. So there's a whole routine to this section. So you want to follow what you see me doing. That's going to be pretty reliable way to do it. But mainly you're going to find the safe spots on the fence. And you're going to hang out there and take your shots from there when you can. So you see you can jump to this edge and swipe at that spider. You can also use your charge shot. There is no timer in this game, so you can always sit back and use your charge shots to try to take shit out if you really want to do that. I didn't do that too much on this stage. I think I did it once, but you know, it was easy enough to get up close and kill shit. You just have to have all your positionings right. You know, and basically if you get hit at any time while you're on the fence, it's instant death, so that's why you don't want to take any damage. At least not while you're climbing, because you'll pretty much get knocked into a hole. Remember, when you hit those flying guys once, they rush into you in skeleton form a second time. So you got to be ready to hit them a second time when they do that. So here you can stay in the middle, or you can stay all the way up at the top and dodge that arc. Now take these guys out with your sword. Just stay up high. You should clear out all the spiders before you move. And then get in this safe spot where the fire arcs. Actually, you can throw out your... you can just go down and throw out your special, your charge shot, and take that thing out. That's what I ended up doing. And then you see where the safe spots are. Pretty easy to tell what's going on. It is a little tricky, though. You have to have everything down, you know, correctly with your positioning. It's pretty much all positioning, though. Really, it's all it really is. It's really not too hard. So this is another checkpoint. This one's a little tricky. This is right before the final boss, but it's a little tricky. I got sloppy here. Because it's difficult to clear out the turret things. You know. I mean, you could use your sub-weapons if you want. But I wasn't, you know, too concerned with it. I probably could have used those little sub-weapons to take it out, but... At least they give you some ledges so that if you fall, you may catch a ledge. I never really fell to my death in this area, I don't think, from up here. I mean, but you may fall pretty far down. But eventually, at least the turrets don't spawn if you already killed them, so at least enemies don't come back like in the NES games, so you can clear them out. Eventually, you'll have a pretty clear area to move around, and it'll be very easy. The only thing that makes it slightly challenging is that you're getting shot while you're trying to climb up, but not too bad. So now the final boss has some very specific strats. So this is the final boss. There's a total movement rhythm to the boss. I don't know if I'm going to be able to explain it fully, but you'll see it. If you kind of study what's going on and try what I'm saying, eventually it'll click for you. But you may have to experiment with it for a little bit. You get a checkpoint right for this final boss, the first form anyway. You don't get a checkpoint for the second form. So you're mainly staying in this one area where I am, and you're just jumping his attacks. Then you jump and let him rush, hit him in the back a few times, hit him while he's jumping over you, and then make sure you're moving to the right so that you're just out of range of when he lands again. Very hard for me to explain it, though. You know, but you'll see there's a total rhythm to what I'm doing, but it may take a while for it to click for you. But if you don't understand part of what I'm doing, try watching the video of that section and see if you can put it together. Because there's a whole movement pattern here which makes it very easy to beat this guy without taking any damage. and you'll see me do that. And it's actually very easy. But it took me a while to get the pattern, but once I got it, it was very easy. So I will just say that I'm not doing all this stuff reactively. There's a pattern to this. And he'll do the same shit over again and again. He repeats the same movements again and again and again. So you just got to memorize your movements and get everything plotted out. So for this guy, same kind of thing. He does the same patterns over and over again. So when he rushes, as soon as he makes like a sound, you're going to double jump, and you'll double jump over his rush. For this, you move left to right and just don't let him fall on top. You hit him like once and then start jumping over him again. You can utilize some of your Scythe weapon to take some of his health too, while he's rushing at you. Now you don't need to get hit on those parts where he drops all those little balls down, but I always would take damage because I'm playing on like a 65-inch screen, so I usually get blindsided by that. But it's easy to dodge. So for this part, you get all the way to the wall, and you can throw some sub weapons at him. And then he does the same shit again. You really just got to get your positionings down, and you got to count how many strikes you're going to do. For me, there's some parts where I'll do one strike and some parts where I may get 2 strikes in, but you have to count how many strikes that you're going to get in before you move again. That's a good way to time your rhythm and your movement. So you just want to map that out. So I would say, watch the video and see how to dodge the attacks. The only thing I didn't dodge in the video was was that part where he drops down all those little balls that explode. But it's very easy to dodge. It's just getting in the gap. So I can tell you what to do there. Just make sure you're standing in that gap and you won't take any damage. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.